Hello, welcome to the Retroprogressive Yoga Institute. My name is Swami Omkarananda. I am a disciple of Prabhuji, and in these courses I'm sharing my reflections on the book written by my spiritual master on the Tantric revelation. The book is called Tantra, Liberation in the World, and is very recommending to follow along these courses, to have a book, because we just touch a few of the many points that Prabhuji shares, and nothing can replace the reflective reading of the book itself for whoever is interested in benefiting from the wisdom of this path. In the previous lecture, which I recommend to watch before this one, we start studying the first section of the book called Tantric Vision. And we continue now speaking about chapter number 1, the essence of the Tantric Vision. We start studying the human conditioning, very central topic in this spiritual path, to understand our conditioning with the purpose of overcoming and transcending. We saw how the vrittis, vasanas and samskaras go and create our personality, and then we get so much identified with our choices and desires. Vrittis are thoughts, vasanas are subconscious desires, and samskaras are habits. So we will continue studying these three, how they work in this current class. So this is the paragraph that we will analyze today. Tantra suggests developing an awareness of desires to understand their origins and phenomenology. Without exploring emotions, it is impossible to evolve and transcend them. This paragraph mentions develop awareness, understand, and explore. Core values in the retroprogressive path. We are our object of exploration. We can dedicate our life to many things. There are so many beautiful disciplines and abilities that we can explore: medicine, anatomy, astronomy, science, sports. But this path tells you, one second, you are attracted to all these fields, but who you are and how you make your choices and why you are attracted, what is the motivation, what you're looking for by developing these fields. Let's explore yourself. That's the main topic of exploration, because no matter how much you will make efforts to achieve whatever you want, without knowing who you are and what operates you, what makes you choose, you will not feel complete. And there are different paths that focus on different aspects. This particular yogic path focuses on your desires, your passions, your choices, your conditioning, and explore from where they come, how they operate, and is so helpful to understand ourselves, because once we know how we operate, we can eventually not identify and reconnect to our true source. This is the retroprogressive, that it is the progress that reconnects to the origin, to the original nature. So Prabhuji brings an example that helps us to understand our desires. He says as follows: exploring desires. In looking at an advertisement for cigarettes, the thought vritti of smoking is born. We can ignore it and go on with our lives, or, on the contrary, we can identify ourselves with this thought, buy a pack of cigarettes and smoke one, upon which a tendency, vasana, will arise. The vasana will express its force by repeating the same vritti, which, if continuously satisfied by our habitual purchase of cigarettes and by the corresponding habits which surround our addictions, will reach deeper and subtler levels of our mind until it forms an impression, samskara, and we finally become a smoker. Let's analyze the process of desires. First, we have the advertisement of cigarettes. We will learn the term jnana, or knowledge, meaning that something comes to the field of knowledge, in this case, an external stimuli, that it comes with a promise of an enjoyable situation. From this jnana comes the icha. Icha is desire. So arise a desire, stimulate a desire to smoke. And because we don't have a previous experience, we can still choose if we identify with this desire or we don't. If we don't, so there will not be any action following this icha. So there will not be kriya. Kriya is action in Sanskrit. But if we identify with this icha, we will act upon it. We will buy a pack of cigarettes and buy one. This will create a vasana, a certain registration in our mental warehouse that is considered positive or enjoyable. Because we have already the impression, this vasana will arise more vrittis, asking to repeat. So asking for another time to experience again this same experience of smoking. When these vrittis arise to the lake of our awareness, if we act upon it, means again, if we identify with it, we will go and reinforce the vasana and going deeper, creating already a tendency. So we will going and losing our freedom of choice the more we repeat the same experience, creating deeper tendencies. If we continue over and over, we will become to the situation of creating a samskara, which is a habit. It's already the way I always act, is my habit to act like this. And if I keep reinforcing the same behavior, all this will create my personality. It will define me, and then I will become a smoker. So we, in this world of unknowing, we go and look for definitions. We try to define ourselves. We cannot bear this uncertainty of not knowing who we are. This is how we identify with our body, we identify with our name, with our personality, with our profession, and with our desires. This creates who we are. Because we don't know who we are, we try to define who you are. And definitely your choices, your habits, your tendencies give you a feeling of being someone, some independent entity, making his own choices in the world, trying to fulfill his own desires. And these desires, take us all our energy, disconnect us from our original source, and create a state, illusionary state of separation. This is the human conditioning. Because we don't know who we are, and we are aware that we disconnected from our source, it's a desperate attempt to define ourselves. Now the Tantra says you need to know and understand how you work, why your attention is so scattered to everything else to fulfill your desires. Bring your attention inwards to the subject of the experience, to the one who is experiencing this desire and is able to watch them and is free to act or not act, kriya or not kriya, identify or not identify. Who you are in all this play of actions and desires, who you are. So the Tantra says that you are a microcosmos from the macrocosmos. The microcosmos is your embodiment. You are an embodiment of the divine powers. So what are the divine powers according to Tantra? Fundamental nature of the divine. The divine has 5 supreme powers. 1, Icha Shakti, the power of divine consciousness. Ananda Shakti, the power of absolute bliss. Icha Shakti, the power of divine will. Jnana Shakti, the power of divine knowing. Kriya Shakti, the power of divine acting or manifesting. We see here the divine powers. Jnana is the knowledge, the divine knowledge. Icha is the divine will. Kriya is the divine power to act. Basically, all these Shaktis operate as what we call us, that we are not separate from the divine. When we call us me, is in the moment that I identify with my conditioning. And all the purpose of this path is to study, learn, explore the conditioning in order to become aware, liberate from the conditioning, liberation in the word, and reconnect to the divine will. But it's very different desires than Icha Shakti, than the divine desires. So let's study the differences. Desires are will to repetition, meaning you have a certain experience in the past and you register this as positive and you do efforts in order to repeat it. But if we manage to reconnect with the Icha Shakti without identifying with our conditioning, we will be a tool of the precognitive, creative will towards self-expression. This is the only way that we will really be able to maximize this joy that eventually we look for with our desires, because there is some creative power in us that want to self-express. And in our ignorance, we identify with our body and consider this our own power. And in our identification, we are not creative. We cannot think about new things because the thought is only repetition. We can only thought about things that are defined in the boundaries of the mind and registered in the warehouse of our thoughts. So as much as we would like to enjoy, we only repeat what we enjoyed in the past. And we disconnect from the Icha Shakti that want to express the maximum creativity through us, through our tool, and reunite with the divine will. The desires drain us. We are enslaved by them. We cannot even enjoy in totality because it's so limited, it's so powerless, because it's full of past. It lacks any creativity. But the Icha Shakti is the source of life and vitality. If we connect with our Icha Shakti, if we stop identifying with the conditioning, we will enjoy the endless energy that comes from our vitality. When we are slaving the desires, we are motivated by gain. We have interest there. It's impure, it's egoistic. It's trying to get some pleasure in the future, and it's ready even to suffer in the present just for this promise of the gain in the future. If we reconnect with our divine Shakti, divine Icha Shakti, we become artistic expressions that are for their own sake. It's not for something, but the expression itself is the beauty, is the completeness. It's not an effort to achieve something that is missing, but it's just a beautiful expression of what it is and what we have. The desires are looking for pleasure, and pleasure is usually bodily pleasure, and it's a very limited, and it's a drop of the pleasure that we can have if we don't identify with the mind. The state of Icha Shakti is a state of fullness, of blissful fullness. And if we pay attention, every desire tries to achieve a state of fullness. This is why we have desires. But when we identify with our vasanas, we disconnect from the blissful state and we convince ourselves that something is missing, that I need to achieve something that I don't have now. And therefore, I waste my life in the pursuit of something that I'm lacking. The suggestion of the reconnection to the divine is to relax in the fullness of what you are. That is the retroprogressive, is to go back, it's progress, but backward to your real nature. The desires originate from the mind. You cannot desire something that it's not registered in the mind. It's just to recycle previous experiences with the illusionary hope that this time will be total, and it will never be total because the mind is partial and it's disconnected from the totality. But the Icha Shakti, the divine will, is the connection to the will. So we have the endless powers of the will, of the divine will, expressing through us. And this is the state in which the Tantrikas could use the study of the desires to overcome them and reconnect to the divine will. Surrender to desires. Prabhuji writes, Tantra suggests consciously surrendering to desires and passion in order to transcend them. That is, consciously observing without being overpowered or dragged down. You will discover that you can use the power of desires to advance without identifying with their direction. Many religions, spiritual paths, and yogic disciplines recognize the slavery that brings the desire and recommends to not to act upon our desires, to suppress them, to purify them, just to stop the action. But the Tantra recognizes that you can stop maybe the action by discipline or by external rules, but this is not the best way to treat desires, because if we choke them, they will become more and more unconscious and they will act without our awareness, and anyways they will decide for our actions whether we want it or not, because the power behind desires is stronger than how much we can stop them. The healthy way to deal with desires, says the Tantric Yoga, is to know them, even to surrender to them, because there is certain power in them that we can use them to elevate ourselves. Because ultimately, if we connect to the source of desire, we will see that there is Icha Shakti behind them. And how we do that? Our problem is the identification with the mind, with the conditioning. And the reason we cannot be a tool in the hands of the Icha Shakti is because we disconnected by our identification. But if we watch it, we watch how it works, we can eventually reconnect to the divine will instead of wasting this energy. So let's give ourselves to the exploration, because we are so controlled in the mind that we cannot even give ourselves in totality to the power of desire. And the Tantrikas testify that once you forget yourself into your desires, the limits of your conditioning, the walls of your conditioning fall, and you reconnect to the Icha Shakti, becoming one with the source, with the true source of the desires. The way to use desires for liberation is to trace their purpose, what they truly look for. Yes, they want a big house, but what they truly want, expansion, lack of limits. Yes, they want company, but what they really want, they want unity. They want to be one with the whole. So instead of stopping it, accepting it and transcending from this acceptance, and maximize it in the way that we will notice that they have the power to reunite. Because in the moment that we forget ourselves into this power, we will reconnect to the divine will, with the divine desire. Tantra is for passionate yogis. There might be seekers that are naturally inclined for disconnection, introspection, austerities. But the Tantra is for those who are very connected to their bodies, to their senses, to the world, and they don't want to disconnect from the world, but to be an instrument in the world. That's why it's liberation in the world, becoming an instrument in the hands of the divine will, becoming engaged in this amazing experience of the dance between Shiva and Shakti, and they want to dance here, to be brush in the hands of the ultimate artistic expression of the divine. And this is the path that offers a way to channel and to sublimate these sensual attractions towards creativity. There is a story that Prabhuji brings in this chapter that explains this point. It tells about two friends that they decided to meet in the city and have a fun day. So they were going around, having a good time together, and suddenly they came across a street in which there was a Hindu temple on one side and a brothel in the other side. And they noticed it and they said, you know, what a place to open a brothel just in front of a Hindu temple. And the friend said, why don't we go to the brothel, have some drinks, dance, have some fun? And the friend said, you know what, I think I have a better plan. Why don't we go to the Hindu temple? I hear the bells start ringing. There is a ceremony. I'm sure it will be a very enriching experience. Why don't we go there? No, you know, it's not for me. And each one, it was like pushing to its direction. Then they came up with a plan. Why don't you go to the temple and I go to the brothel? We will meet here again in an hour. They said, that sounds a good plan. Have fun. And they departure. The friend that was in the temple, he was sitting in front of the deities, and the puja was so monotonic and the mantras were going on and on. He was getting so bored and so regretful. He said, that was such a bad choice. Nothing is going on here. I'm sure my friend is having a good time and I don't feel comfortable to go in the middle of the ceremony. Why did I choose to come here? On the other hand, the friend in the brothel was, you know, surrounded by beautiful ladies and having drinks and dancing, but suddenly he started feeling remorse. He said, what a low human being I am. Look at my friend. He's so much more elevated. He has spiritual aspirations. I am like an animal, an instinctive being, just the slave of my lower tendencies. I'm here drunk and wasted. I really feel so regretful about my choice. The conclusion of this story is that the friend that was in the temple, in fact, was in the brothel. And the friend that was in the brothel, he got all the spiritual benefits of the friend that was in the temple. The Tantra teaches that it's not a matter of which are your choices. You can have religious tendencies, you can have animalistic tendencies, but what makes the difference is the awareness to your conditioning. The friend in the brothel, he had the self-awareness to look at himself, to recognize that he's a slave of his desires, to feel regretful about it, to say that this is not my best potential. I wish to have higher aspirations. He has the ability to give criticism to himself. This demands bravery and awareness, and said, why I'm so low, why I'm so enslaved. And then he has the wisdom to recognize that all these pleasures that he is engaging in, they don't bring him the ultimate bliss that they promise. It's like to be like an animal, like to be in the instinctive level, and he wants something higher. So the experience of the brothel give him so much self-awareness, so much wisdom, and then when he will eventually choose to go to the temple, it will be a free choice, not based on conditioning, not based on rejection, but based on the understanding that there is no happiness in the conditioning and in the material and sensual gratification. But this cannot be imposed. If it will be imposed, it will be external, it will be weak, and it will eventually fall. All the external rules are just meant for defeat, because our desires are stronger than us. That's the problem. That's why we need rules, because we are like so moved by them. So we cannot explore. The only way to overcome, says the Tantra, is to explore and be aware and allow yourself to enjoy if this is what will bring you the wisdom. The interesting point is that the Tantra revelation was given for those sitting in the temple. There was a time where the Brahmanas were sitting in the temple doing all the rituals in the Vedic India and feeling conditioned and being aware that although I'm occupied in very elevated rituals and I am being a priest and I'm being performing offerings for the divine, I was educated this way. I cannot choose otherwise. I'm not free. I'm not sincere. And I'm really fantasizing on what could be if I will be engaging in enjoyment. So this is not freedom. I want to be free. So they left the temples and they went to live in the crematoriums and they went to explore the nature of desires. They want to explore what is death. They want to explore life. They want to give up their position and assume the position of being fallen or being looked, with the understanding that pride is one of the worst enemies of spiritual development. So I'm rather being humble and they look at me as I'm being fallen. It gives me the freedom from the slavery of defending my position, defending my honor, defending my social caste all my life. And then I don't live, I am a slave of my own identification. I'd rather go to the streets and just people despise me. That's freedom for me because I don't need anymore the appreciation of people. And this is how this revelation was given to the very brave yogis that were capable of opening the path of exploring desires and experimenting with all the things that were totally forbidden in their Vedic culture, and they dedicate to the exploration in a way not just to be wasted and to dedicate to enjoy, but to explore and overcome desires for what? Ultimately, to be able to break this identification, get free from the conditioning, and becoming a tool for the Icha Shakti, for the divine will, for the pure expression of our true nature. So this is the invitation of this path. This is the path that opened these brave tantrikas, and so much relevant for us 1,500 years afterwards, in which the obsession towards enjoyment becomes so much more, and we are so much farther away from our nature, conditioned to levels that it's very hard to go on in this way. So those are really gifts that are there waiting for us to be discovered, to be lived. And Prabhuji is very compassionate in the way of sharing his path, his discoveries, and the wisdom, giving the wisdom in a way that we can digest and apply to our lives. So with the hope that this light that the Tantrikas brought will open our paths for liberation, wishing this to all of us and very grateful for what they are giving us. So in the next class we will continue exploring the different powers of the divine. Thank you. Jaya Prabhuji.